All right, let's talk about that moment. You flip the page to section B of your AS politics paper and your stomach just drops, right? Those source questions, they can feel like a total minefield. But here's the thing. What if I told you they're not really a test of knowledge? What if they're a game with a very clear set of rules? Well, today we're going to learn how to play that game and how to win.
First things first. If you're walking into Section B thinking you just need to write a standard politics essay, you are walking straight into a trap. Seriously, this isn't about dumping everything you know about a topic. It's about how you use the very specific information they put right in front of you.
Exactly. The absolute best way to think about this section is as a game. It has specific rules, it has clear objectives, and once you know the playbook, you can score big points every single time. And that playbook is exactly what we're going to break down right now.
So step one in any game is to know the field of play. In Section B, you're not just playing on one field. You're competing in two totally different arenas. You've got the single source task and you've got the dual source task. You have to master both, and trust me, each one requires a completely different strategy. Okay, let's get this crystal clear, because this is probably the most important distinction of all. In that first arena, the single source one, your job is to be an interpreter. You're there to explain what the text is arguing, using your political knowledge as a lens. But in the second arena, the dual source one, your role changes completely. Now, you're the judge. You have to weigh the evidence from two competing sources and deliver a final, decisive verdict on which one is more compelling. To win in these arenas, you've got to have the right skills in your arsenal. In exam speak, these are called the assessment objectives, or AOs. But let's be real, that just sounds like boring jargon. So let's decode what they actually mean and how you can use them to absolutely rack up the points. First up is AO1, knowledge and understanding. Think of this as your toolkit. But it's not about throwing the whole toolbox at the question. No. It's about strategically picking the one right tool, that perfect piece of political knowledge, to unlock the meaning of a specific point that's made in the source. It's about precision, not a brain dump.
So the key here is being super targeted. Ask yourself, are you using the proper technical terms like devolution or collective responsibility to label what the source is describing? Is every bit of your own knowledge serving the text and not the other way around? And are you quickly defining concepts to show the examiner, hey, I know my stuff? You tick these off, your AO1 is rock solid.
Next up, AO2, analysis. Now, this is your power move. This is where you go from just saying what the source says to explaining why it actually matters. It's all about spotting those core arguments, the little hooks, and then unpacking their bigger political significance. This is what critical thinking looks like. And your checklist for this is super simple, but absolutely vital. Always start with a quote. Then, instead of just rephrasing it, you ask the magic question. So what? If the source mentions low voter turnout, you explain that this implies a wider crisis of democratic legitimacy. And for that dual source question, you'll be using words like whereas and in contrast to build that direct point-by-point comparison. And finally, exclusive to that dual source arena, we have AO3, evaluation. You could think of this as the final boss. It is not enough to just compare what the two sources say. You have to put them in the ring, weigh them against each other, and declare a winner. You must make a judgment call. And to really nail AO3, you have to explain why one source's argument is stronger. Is it more realistic? Does it use better evidence? Is the other one's logic a little shaky? You need to make these little mini judgments all the way through your answer, so that when you get to your final verdict, it feels totally earned, not just tacked on at the end. Okay, so you know the skills you need to score the points, but how do you actually put them into action on the page? You need a playbook, a structure that organizes everything into a perfect point-scoring attack. And that playbook is the Peel method. Honestly, it's the formula for every single top-level paragraph you're going to write. For that first single source question, we use what I call the explanatory peel. It's simple. You make your point by finding a claim in the text. You provide evidence by quoting it directly. Then comes the explanation, where you bring in your AO1 knowledge and your AO2 analysis to unpack it all. And finally, you link it right back to the question. It's structured, it's simple, and it is so effective. So let's imagine the source makes a point about how flexible the UK Constitution is. Your first move, you quote their evidence. Maybe something about how laws can be changed through ordinary legislation.
Then you bring in your own knowledge, your AO1, explaining that this is possible because of concepts like statute law and the UK's uncodified system. Boom. That's the Peel structure in action, creating a perfect, self-contained argument.
Now for the dual source, we adapt the playbook. Think of it as comparative Peel. You still start with a point, but this time it's a theme where the two sources directly clash. You give the evidence from source A, but then, and this is the crucial part, you immediately pivot to compare it with source B's view. The entire debate happens inside a single paragraph, and it all leads to your final evaluation.
So after comparing what source A says about the Lord's expertise against what source B says about their lack of a democratic mandate, you land the final punch, the evaluation. You make a mini judgment, just like this one on the screen, stating which side you find more convincing and, crucially, why. That's exactly how you bag those AO3 points.
Right. Now for the insider track. We've covered the rules of the game and the playbook. Let's get into the pro tips, the stuff that examiners notice, the things that will give you a serious competitive edge.
And here is the first pro tip, a huge one. Stop being a passive reader and become a text miner. Your job is to go into that source with a pickaxe, find those valuable little nuggets, those specific claims and arguments, and then use your political knowledge to show the examiner their true worth. And this all leads us to the golden rule. This single most important rule of this entire game. I want you to burn this into your brain. The source is the boss, always. Every single argument, every point, every piece of knowledge you use must be directly tied to the text in front of you. If you stray from the source, you're out of the game. It's that simple.
And try thinking of yourself as a mediator, right? The source makes a claim, and your job is to explain the technical political logic behind that claim to the examiner. You're the expert interpreter, the one who translates the author's general statements into precise political analysis. And just remember, your own knowledge is playing a supporting role here, not the lead. It's there to provide a quick definition or maybe a brief example to prove that the source's point is valid. Don't let it take over the show. Whatever you do, avoid the dreaded knowledge dump at all costs.
Finally, a practical tip. Build your expert vocabulary. Using specific phrases can literally signal to the examiner which skill you're using. For your analysis, use connectives like, this implies a tension between. For evaluation, try phrases like, source B provides a more nuanced account because. This is how you signpost those top-level skills and make it easy for them to give you the marks.
So let's bring it all together. You know the skills, you've got the playbook, and you've got the pro tips. But it all comes back to that one simple, non-negotiable rule. The most important takeaway from all of this is, the source is always, always the boss. So there you have it. You know the rules, you have the skills, and you've got the playbook. And you will never forget that golden rule. The game is no longer a mystery. You're ready to step into the arena. You're ready to play.